If you're ready for freedom from the grind, then passive income from real estate investing is the best way to get you there. If you don't know where to start or what to do next, then the Rent Roll Radio Show is the best place to get you there. Join us while we discuss the best practices, strategies, and mindset you'll need and give you actionable content to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. Today, we are joined by Todd Dexheimer. He is the principal over at Endurus Capital. Todd, thank you so much for joining the show, and glad you joined us.
Yeah, absolutely, Sterling. Thanks for having me, man. Excited to get going.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your backstory, how you got into real estate, what you were doing before that, and kind of what you're up to today?
Absolutely. So, before real estate, I was a high school teacher. So I was teaching, I was teaching like wood technology and metals and welding and architecture and stuff like that.
I don't know why, but of all of the profession transitions to real estate investor, I always love the teacher the most. And I think it's just because like you historically think of like teachers as being so underpaid. And I just love the like rags to riches story of I was a teacher making 40 grand a year and now I'm a multimillionaire because I transitioned into apartment complexes with no additional, formal education. I just love that story. Yeah.
I only wish I was making $40,000 a year. I was making like 30. I think my last year I was either making 30, 32, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And so I was actually, look, I mean, as a teacher, you're taught to follow the line, like most W-2s, right? You're not thinking outside of the box. But as a industrial tech teacher, I was always thinking outside of the box. And so I was always trying to change my classes and come up with new ideas and all that kind of stuff. But I was always shot down because status quo was just good enough. And like looking back, it's like I was an entrepreneur then. I was always wanting to improve, make things better. Like just the status quo just wasn't good enough for me. And that really honestly was part of the reason why I was like, this just isn't for me. Like I can't be a part of this old antiquated system that like nobody wants to improve. They all talk about improving, but nobody really wants to. So anyways, through reading a lot of books and just a lot of thinking, I got into real estate. I knew something had to change, and I thought about going back to school and, becoming an architect or whatever. And it just was like that's just, I don't want to go back to school. And so I ended up kind of really honestly just stumbling into real estate through books, and got the bug and started buying properties in 2008. Started buying just single families, just one to four family properties, and bought a bunch of those, ran out of money and had to start flipping. And so finally in 2010, I convinced my wife to quit my job. Actually, we went to church and listened to the pastor. I kept on asking my wife to quit my job. She's like, no, I can't. You told me, more years or whatever. So we go to church, and the pastor, I can't remember exactly what he said. But, basically like following your dreams type of thing. And we get done with church and we're both completely silent. We drive, we get to the first stoplight, and my wife looks over to me and she said, you can quit your job. Just show me the money. So I'm like, okay, perfect. So I showed her, we had 5 rentals at the time, and it's like, hey, this adds up to like $30,000. I'm making 32 at my, job. Yeah. I'm not paying taxes on this $30,000 in rentals because we got depreciation. So, net we're making way more. Plus I'm doing a couple of flips here and there. And, so we got plenty of money. And that was the snowball. And that's really started there. I guess it kind of already had started, but really started rolling fast. Ended up flipping about 100 houses, having about 100 also 1 to 4 families. rental units, and then transitioned over to multifamily. And so now I went from mid multifamily, mid-size, like 20, 10, 20, 30 unit buildings to now we're doing 100 plus unit multifamily, doing syndication, value add, syndication, and kind of mostly in the Midwest, Mid-South. So we're in Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee.
Awesome. So there's a lot of things about your story that I resonate with and love to hear. One thing that you said early on is about like why you decided to leave your job. And it was about how the systems were antiquated and nobody really wanted to improve it. So I feel that so much in corporate life. What made me want to quit, because, in corporate America, I was very successful and I was very well compensated. But there was these things, these problems that would arise. And I'm like, that's a terribly inefficient, broken system. Like we're pissing off customers, we're pissing off employees, like that could easily be fixed and become way more efficient. And the answer was just always no. And what it does is it encroaches on your soul, and you're like, I can't be in this environment where there's all this broken shit that nobody wants to fix. You know what I mean? Now, like in my business, we see a problem and like we're all over it. Like what can we do to fix the problem? And being stuck in those institutions, those, education or large businesses in corporate America, where they don't have that spirit for constant improvement and growth and efficiency.
Yeah.
It just drove me nuts.
Yeah. I don't understand it. They don't have the time for it. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of people. And once you have a larger company, I mean, in a school, especially, I mean, you've got all these teachers and you got to get people on board. It's just like, and then you get one person that's stuck in that line that says, nah, let's keep it the same. And all of a sudden the wheels fall off, right? No.
Yeah.
Now that great idea that people were starting to get on board with, want to change. And all of a sudden this one person is negative, poo-poos it, and then boom, everything falls apart and you're back to ground zero. So that's how it always was in teaching, and just kind of drove me nuts. Yeah.
So
the system was crazy.
So once you started buying rental properties, you said you ran out of money and had to start flipping houses. I did the same thing. A lot of people start flipping. I bought 75 rentals before I ever flipped a house. But like you said, because I ran out of money. You also mentioned that the cash flow off of the 5 houses that you had came out to $30,000 a year. Now looking back, did you really make $30,000 a year on those 5? I mean, if you bought them in 2008, you very well might have. But like, I just know that like I forecasted cash flow from single family rentals.
Yeah.
And then I go back and I'm like, well, that didn't work out the way I planned.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you take those properties and take the cash flow, average them throughout the years, probably not because did they make that when I said it, in 2010? Yeah, they were making that and they made it, the year before and probably the year or two after. But then all of a sudden you got a tenant that doesn't pay rent and, that eats your cash flow up. You got a roof you got to replace. I'm thinking of those properties, and 2 of those properties I've had to replace roofs. One of them I sold. And then, one of them I just put like a $20,000 renovation into, so, it's just like, yeah, they make, certainly you combine them, they make 30 grand a year. Some years, other years they make negative $10,000 because I stuck a bunch of money into them. And, so if you average it out, maybe it's 15 to 20, but
yeah,
those ones are good because I bought them at a really good time.
Sure.
And I haven't leveraged them. Some of the other ones I would refinance and re-leverage. Those ones I never did. So they've got very little debt on them. And so they're really solid cash flow.
Awesome.
But they're a lot more work. I mean, it just is like,
yeah,
you're buying single families and duplexes. They're just a lot more work.
So, when you transitioned to multifamily, what do you mean by transition? Did you start working on multifamily in addition to what you were doing, or did you just sell all your rentals, quit flipping houses and go all in multifamily? In large multifamily.
I quit flipping houses. I quit buying 1 to 4 families, and I went all in, but I did not sell all my 1 to 4 families. So I kept them. And quite frankly, still to this day, I have quite a few of them. I've just kind of been selling them here and there. So I think I sold 4 or 5 last year. I'll probably do the same this year. And that's kind of been the trend. I'll sell 4 to 5 every single year. And I'll probably do that until I'm done with them. I think I've got like 20 left, 25 left. And so and when I get sick, honestly, it's when I get sick of them. Like, I don't know, a tenant leaves and they leave a mess, and I'm like, I don't want to do this again. Yeah. Like, let's just sell this stupid thing. A property management will come to me and they'll have this like repair bill, and it's like, screw it, sell it. That one's on the chopping block. Get rid of it. I don't want to deal with it. Honestly, and that's what it is. Like if we get a resident that puts a lot of damages on it, maybe I got to put like $5-6 into it. I'm like, hey, why don't we let's put 10 or 15 into it and make it a little bit nicer, and then let's sell it. Yeah. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
So with the larger multifamilies, tell me about kind of how that started and how it evolved. When did you start buying the above field flexes?
Yeah. So I started buying like 20 unit buildings and 10 unit buildings and things like that. Honestly, so that was back in like 2015, and it was just, I was just like, I'm burned out. Like I can't be doing these flips anymore. The margins were getting tighter. The margins on the 1 to 4 families were getting tighter. And I'm like, I can't just keep doing these. I'm not going to grow and get to where I wanted to be. I wanted to get 1,000 units. That was my goal. Like I want to get 1,000 units. I'm stuck at like not just under 100. I was at like 94 or something like that. Whatever the number was. But I'm like, I'm just like, it's going to take me forever to get there. I got to do something different. So I start buying these, 10, 20 unit buildings. I bought the very first one. It was a 22 unit building. I bought it contract for deed from this guy. And this is in 2015. And I actually had it under contract. I was going to buy it with bank financing and walk through this property. I'm like, dude, this is a freaking disaster. You've got 9 out of the 22 units occupied. There's a bunch of work to do. I still want to buy your property, but here's the deal. I need a contract for deed. I'll give you a 10% down payment. This is what it looks like. And by the way, if we do this contract for deed, I need to reduce the purchase price, down to 435. I think I reduced it by like 10, 15 grand. And he said, okay. Yeah. I'm like, perfect. Well, here's what I did. I showed him what he was going to get on a monthly payment. And I realized that this guy, I had a great conversation with him when I walked and did the due diligence. I had a great conversation with this guy and understood that what he was trying to do is retire, move to Florida, and spend more time with his grandkids. But he still liked the idea of cash flow, passive income. So I'm like, okay, let's create passive income for you. So this is what I'm going to do. Here's what it looks like. And we struck a deal. So paid him 5% interest, gave him a 10% down payment, and off to the races. And so that was a slick deal. I partnered with an investor of mine, and we did the deal together. Second deal I did something very similar. It was I gave that guy a 5% down payment, contract for deed. He wanted more. So I said, here, I'll tell you what, I'm going to renovate this unit or this building. We're going to do a bunch of renovations. We're sticking whatever it was, $250,000 into this building. And so I can't give you more money, but I'm going to spend that money. So what we'll do is we'll put that money into an escrow account, and the escrow account will be controlled by my attorney. And as I complete construction, we'll release funds out of that escrow account. But if I default, you can have that $250,000. So he's like, oh, that makes sense. Let's do that. So I gave him a 5% down payment, cash in hand, right? And the $250,000, that was my renovation. That went into an escrow account, basically held by my attorney, and we did draws on it, and boom, that was done. So
Awesome.
allowed me to get in for a lot less money.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, it's so funny. I love hearing these creative finance structure type deals, and it's always like an evolution from basically asking the seller like what they want. And it's a message I've been trying to communicate to my team, because they'll come in and they'll say, well, and it drives me nuts working with realtors, because then you got 2 degrees of separation. You can't sit down with them and say like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? Like, what's the optimal situation for you? Because like you said, your guy, you probably solved a lot of his problems because you asked him like what he wanted. Well, he wanted to go retire in Florida and get monthly cash flow. He also probably didn't want to get hit with a huge tax liability like at sale. So I've had sellers, a lot of times buyers are hesitant to bring up those kind of out to ask like what the seller wants, what they really want. And then B, assuming that they wouldn't be willing to do it. So half of my rental portfolio was seller financed to me by somebody that it was their idea, because they had been, collecting and 1031ing all these assets for 40 years. And they didn't want to take a huge tax hit. So they're like, just give me 10%. Like you said, half of the portfolio I did 10%, the other half I did 5%, and pay me, some of them are at 5.5%, some of them are at 6%. And, he's happy. And in fact, I called him the other day. I called him the other day to tell him I was going to sell one of his buildings, and he was pissed off. He's like, what am I going to do with that money now? So it truly was in his best interest. And I think if new investors would approach, not just assuming, we used to call it selling out of our own pocket, not assuming that they need all the cash because we would want all the cash, they might have a completely different scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Let him know I've got a syndication deal he can invest in, by the way. So, I mean, look, it's, and by the way, I've done it several times with brokers involved, and you just have to be, here's the biggest thing with the broker involved is you have to get meetings set up with the seller. And some brokers will really push back on that, but it's not about asking, it's about communicating, right? I don't ask to set up a meeting with the seller. I tell the broker we're going to set up a meeting with the seller. And I don't ask if the seller will take seller financing or do any seller financing. I tell the broker we're going to offer seller financing. Yeah. So I don't ask. I present opportunities. I communicate, and it's totally different. When you start to ask, is it okay? It's easy for them to say, well, no. But when you say, look, here's what I want to do. We're going to do this type of seller financing, blah, blah, blah. Here are the terms. And I need you to set up a meeting with the seller. Let's do Monday at 10 a.m.
Nice.
That's a totally different conversation than, hey, do you think the seller would be willing to, maybe do some contract for deed or something? Like, can you ask them that? And no, it's totally different. Like, you're telling the broker exactly what you're going to do, and you set up a meeting. And if the broker is going to have, going to fight it from the beginning, if you know it before you even present it, then you say, hey, I'm ready to present an offer on this property, but I want to talk with the seller first. Let's set up a meeting on Monday at 10 a.m. and we'll walk through the offer. I'll present it to me now. No, I think it's best for me to present it directly to the seller with you involved on the phone call. That's it. A lot of sellers don't want to do it, and that's fine. But you don't know until you ask. And you'll be surprised at how many are open and receptive to the idea. As sellers, sometimes, like, we just negotiated a deal with the buyer, and that was a requirement. We wanted to jump on the phone with them, and we got them to do a lot more than what I would have expected them to do by jumping on the phone with them and having a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So on these larger deals that you're doing today, the 100 plus units, tell us a little bit more about that. Where are you finding them? How are you finding them? How are you funding them? What does that whole thing look like?
Yeah. So a vast majority of the deals we're finding through brokers. And when you're talking bigger deals, the brokers are hogging the deal. So they've got the relationship with the seller and the buyer. And so you got to build good relationships with these brokers. Most of the deals we're buying are quote unquote off market deals. When you have to laugh a little bit at the
They're
word
sending to
off-market.
100 people. Yeah.
Hopefully not that many,
Right.
but they're sending them to plenty of other people. And a lot of times what happens with these off-market deals, and here's what's going on, is that the seller is, the owner is talking with, Cushman Wakefield broker, but they're also talking to the Marcus and Millichap broker and the CBRE broker. And all three of those brokers, they're saying, hey, I don't want you to shop this around. Maybe tell your top, 3 to 5, buyers that you really think would be interested. Okay, well, now we got 15 or so people that have heard about this deal. So it's maybe not the whole market, but it's still plenty. And so it's still not off market, truly. It's being marketed.
Well, and honestly, the 15 that they're sending it to are going to be the top 15 that they know can close. So it's the real competition, right?
It's a real competition.
Because out of that 100, right, like probably 85% aren't like real competition. They couldn't close on time or whatever. Yeah. So it's, by sending it to those top 15, it might as well. Those were the only 15 you were afraid of anyway.
Touche. So our favorite deals actually are the ones that have been under contract and fell out of contract, and the broker comes to us. We bought several of those deals over the last couple of years that have been in and out of contract 1 or 2 times. And then the broker comes to us and goes, hey, we need somebody that can close. Are you guys ready to close? I'm like, yeah, we'll close. Here's what, and we typically are buying it for quite a bit less. But the seller's ready, and they emotionally are spent. And quite frankly, they probably captured some earnest money anyways, so they're okay with a little bit less money. But they're emotionally spent. They want to sell this property. And, a lot of times we're the last ditch effort to buy it. So that's our favorite property. But we also do some direct to owner, but haven't had a lot of success with that. So as far as how we're closing them, syndication. So we're raising all the funds, we're going to our family and friends network and, raising whatever we need, $5-10 million to close the deal, and doing kind of your traditional, syndication.
Are you doing 506Cs or 506Bs?
Mostly 506Bs. And we've done a couple 506. We've done, I guess, one 506C, and then we did a what's it called? A score offering, which is kind of like a 506C.
Awesome. Yeah. What I found is, because in my mind, we started with Bs. We always did Bs. Mm-hmm. And I always kept going like, oh man, if I could just advertise, I could blow this number out, and in turn, I don't know that I've ever gotten, I've done 2 Cs and 3 Bs, but I don't know that I've ever gotten an investor that wasn't a referral or a friend. It's just, and I've got all of the drip campaigns, lead magnet systems and everything set up. And what I think that does is just softens the market for the referrals and makes me look more professional to the existing relationships. But of the 4,000 emails I've dumped into that machine, I don't know that I've ever gotten a cold one worked all the way through and turned into an investor.
Yeah, I think what you're kind of hoping for when you do a 506C. So if somebody's out there, so I do hear this, by the way, there's a lot of people that think, oh, I don't have this big network, but I'm going to do a 506C and I'll be able to raise some money by doing that. And I think they're going to be able to raise millions of dollars through this 506C because everybody's going to be so excited to invest in their deal. That's just not true. That doesn't happen. Exactly what you said. Nobody does, or very, very few people do. And what happens is it's more of like a lead source, right? So they see your deal, they go, oh, interesting. They maybe see it 2 or 3 times, especially if you're continuing to do those C's over and over and over again. They keep seeing your company name. And then they go, let me research Endurus Capital. And they research Endurus Capital. And I go, I see another deal. And they're like, let me call Endurus Capital. Let me set up an appointment with their Endurus Capital. So then they set up an appointment. They have a conversation with me. We get to know each other a little bit. And then the next deal comes out, but they're already on my mailing list. And then they invest in the deal. So it's not that the 506C didn't work, but it didn't necessarily get that investor on that deal that they saw for the very first time. And that's where I think the 506C just is really tough to get. So if you're like, hey, I'm gonna do this, and we're gonna raise $5 million, based on Facebook and LinkedIn and all that kind of like, that's just not going to happen. You might raise $50,000, but you're not raising 5 million or 10 million or something like that. So,
yeah, for sure. So what advice do you have to somebody who's just starting out?
Well, I mean, starting out in what? Like, I guess it really depends. It depends on what angle you're going with, and depends on what they're trying to do. So if you're wanting to start out and you're passive, if you want to start out and you're active, I mean, those are all that kind of stuff is totally different.
Sure. So I would venture to lend the advice to the active folks, right? The passive folks can just give us the money and we'll put it to work for them. But the active guy who wants and answer the question twice. Answer the question for the school teacher that wants to go buy some rental properties and flip houses, and then fast forward however many years, right? And answer the question again for the guy who wants to go from rental properties and flipping houses to buying 100+ assets.
Yeah. And quite frankly, that answer is probably not much different. So here's what I'll say first. Understand what you really want to do. Okay. Understand what you're trying to achieve. So what you just said earlier about if they want to invest passive, they can give the money to us and we'll be stewards of their money and, and help them create wealth that way. Well, here's the thing. I say most people want to get into real estate. They want to get into it because they want to create passive income. If you're wanting to create passive income because you've got a good job, because you own a business, all that kind of stuff, then don't go buy duplexes, single families, or apartment buildings. Invest it passively in a syndication. Invest it passively because that's going to allow you to continue to make money in your day job, not be super distracted. I talked to a guy on my podcast the other day, and he was, making mid 6 figures a year. And he starts buying duplexes and single family houses. And he hires a property management company. And he's like, it was the craziest thing I could have ever done because I'm spending a ton of money on these stupid houses that are barely making me any money. He's like, and I'm taking away from my sales career to go, mess around with these properties. And even though he had third-party property management, he's messing around with them. And he's like, and I'm making mid 6 figures. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to create passive income. So then he took and started investing passively in syndications, and has millions of dollars now in syndications, sold those houses, turned them all into syndications. So anyways, I totally sidetracked on my advice, but that's my point with people. You got to look at, first of all, look at what you want to do. Look at where are you trying to go? And if you're trying to go to where, hey, I want this to be my career, right? I want to create a company because this is what you're doing. You're creating a company. You have to have that mindset. Like you're creating a business. And whether you're buying single family homes, whether you're buying apartment buildings, whether you're buying retail shopping centers, you're creating a business. And so treat it like a business, right? Grow the systems and processes, treat it like a business, and you're going to be so much more successful. I find success, like the most successful people I talk to are the ones that are willing to take action, right? They're willing to take incremental steps to move forward. I hate the you got to think big, go big. The Grant Cardone, the Donald Trump, like I get it. It's really attractive. It's sexy. Like it gets people to click. Right. So that's really cool. They become really popular because they say stuff like that. But why that doesn't work is that Yes, your ideas can be big ideas, but you have to take small steps incrementally, consistent action over and over and over again is going to create big results.
That's that leads into a question I was just about to ask. So do you regret doing all the single family stuff? Do you wish you would have gone sooner, faster? That's what everybody says when I interview them. Like, what mistakes? Sure. Oh, I would have gone bigger, faster. I just would have bought a 100-unit apartment complex right out the gate. I'm like, I didn't have the wherewithal right out the gate to go buy a.
Yeah. So no, I regret? No, I don't. Do I wish I would have maybe started a little earlier? Yeah, because I was definitely ready earlier. But at the same time, you have to understand, like, there's going to be certain things that happen that shift your paradigm. And so there's another big piece of advice. Always allow your paradigm to shift. Always be open to paradigm shifts. And it's listening and it's learning and it's hiring people. Like one of my bigger paradigm shifts was hiring a mindset coach. And he's the one that when I was like, hey, I'm going to keep on buying these 20-unit buildings, eventually kind of get some bigger buildings. Eventually I'll get to a 100-unit building. He's like, why not now? I'm like, well, I got to, and he's like, no, you don't. I'm like, oh, huh. And then I went and bought 204 units within like 3 months of him saying that, so you will have to allow your paradigm to shift and grow. Sometimes you'll get stuck, and those are the dangerous times, right? Those are the times where you get stuck and you just stop growing. And I had a couple of those times where I got stuck and stopped growing. And so if I have any regrets, it was that I didn't allow myself to continue to grow, right? I just got stuck and complacent. I was like the teacher again that just was doing the same stupid stuff over and over again. And if somebody brought me a good idea, I said, no, we're good here, right? We're good here. And so I think that's, but buying that 100-unit apartment complex would have been great to start with in 2008. Absolutely. That would have been freaking awesome. Dude, that would have been amazing. Yeah. But was that ready? Like, no freaking way. If somebody told me the only way to get started in real estate was to buy a 100-unit apartment complex, otherwise don't start, I just wouldn't have started. I'd probably still be a teacher to this day.
Yeah.
So, and that's where the think big, like, oh, you got to go big. No, you don't. You got to get started. You got to take action. You got to get started.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. So what's next for you?
Yeah. I mean, look, we're all about just continue to grow the business. So what's next? I mean, it's continue to grow, continue to focus on, we're really focused this year in particular on our operations. We want to make sure we're as efficient as possible. We want to try to just continue to hone in on our processes and systems and really be a strong business so that we're set up for continued growth in the future. 2023, I think, is probably going to be kind of a weird year. But there's going to be, I feel like we're in kind of a winter here, maybe 2023, maybe 2024, who knows, maybe a couple of years that we're in this kind of like winter season where you're probably not going to be able to buy as many deals. Profitability is maybe not quite as high. And then we'll start to see more of those shake out and some higher profitability. So we want to be set up for that and continue to grow. And it's all about affecting lives right now for us. And we just want to continue to make impact and see the company do good things.
Awesome. So I want to hop over to our radio round and just ask 3 quick questions to help our listeners get to know you a little bit better. Sure. So the first one is, what's your favorite book?
Man, there's so many good ones out there. I love, there's a great book that The Psychology of Money I read recently. That's a really cool book.
That's been on, it keeps popping up and nobody's ever recommended it to me.
The reason I recommend it is because like nobody recommends it. The book that pops in my head is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I love that book and it's great, but everybody recommends books like that. This one's it's a really good. Psychology of Money. You should definitely take a look at it.
The other reason I hadn't pulled the trigger on it yet was I thought maybe it was too elementary or something. But you think, I mean,
I don't think it's too elementary. No.
Awesome. I'm downloading it as soon as we hang up. So, what's your favorite quote?
Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
You get punched in the face, old Tyson.
Get punched in the face, whatever it is. Yeah. So I can't say the quote entirely, but I love the great philosopher Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
But it rings so true in business, man. It just rings so true. You're gonna get knocked around in business. I mean, it's just how it is. You're gonna have this beautiful plan. It's gonna be so amazing, and then somebody's gonna just turn around and kick you right in the teeth. You'd be like, "Where did that come from? That wasn't part of it." and you're gonna have to decide, like, are you gonna put an ice pack on your teeth and keep going, or are you gonna tuck your tail and walk away? Like, what's it going to be?
For sure. What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
Oh, man. Look, I like adventure. So really anything adventure. I love hiking. I love downhill skiing, cross-country skiing. I love hanging out with my family too. But yeah, really adventure.
Awesome. So how can our listeners get in touch with you, find out more about you, invest with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. So there's a couple ways. First, I would encourage them, after they're obviously done listening to this podcast, I've got a podcast too called Pillars of Wealth Creation. Welcome to tune into that. It's on all the same channels. And then my main website is enduruscapital.com, ENDURUS capital.com. And my email is todd@enduruscapital.com. Awesome.
Well, Todd, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners will too. It was great chatting, and look forward to keeping up with you on your journey.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This episode was brought to you by Crestworth Capital. If you're a busy professional and ready to make passive income from real estate investing, then go to crestworthcapital.com, where you'll be able to download a free copy of our ebook to help you get started today. Until next week, happy investing.